Thank you really for having this conversation with us. You have recently returned from the Munich Security Conference, which will probably be remembered for a lot of things. Would the end of the NATO, as we know it, one of them?
Well, hopefully not. I truly hope not. But I can tell you that when we say that we are entering a transactional phase in geopolitics, and not just among the adversaries or trade partners, but among the allies, it raises question: what works, what doesn't work?
Many questions indeed, and well, how would you say if Russia suddenly attacked a NATO member state tomorrow or a week after, would USA join the fight?
Well, that's a good question. I think that we have to do everything so that Russia would not want to try. Apart from that, clearly the current US stance and the position that officials have taken during the most recent hours, in the last 3 or 4 days, starting from Brussels to Munich, I think that they might give Russians a different impression. Because this transactional thing, Russians might question, well, for example, so Americans are asking for Greenland, and Europe is not ready, to do anything about it. Maybe US will not defend it. You take Ukraine and so many other things, right? So this transactionality, it gives an impression to your adversary, an enemy, that they might be ready to try.
So you would say that the possibility that Russia could try something like that have become bigger?
Yes.
During the last days?
Yes, of course.
That's.
Yeah, and I think that we have to, certain things that have been said, especially during the Secretary of Defense visit in Brussels. Most of us focused on Ukraine because that is, that's truly monumental what he's saying, the position that US is taking. But one of the points that needs not to be overlooked is when he said that Europe can no longer count US as a main strategic defense provider to the continent. And many of my colleagues, our former colleagues, and just people, they would say, but this is right? Europe has drifted for too long, not did their homework, and I understand all of that. I completely understand all of that. If only we were not in the face of the biggest geopolitical challenge on our continent. And that just means that we have to be even faster. That is the thing.
And you recently wrote on Twitter that Europe won't survive sleeping through another wake-up call, but we've seen that happening many times for the last few years. So do you actually have a good reason to think that this time will be otherwise? It has to be, right? Will it be?
Well, hypothetical question. If we look back, right, 2008 does not wake us up. The attack on Georgia. 2014 does not wake us up. 2022, again, 3 years we had to boost up our defense, to build up our industry, to help Ukraine, to integrate them, to do so many things. And we just said, no, look, it's impossible. Of course, we cannot integrate Ukraine because it's just too difficult. Well, rebuilding Europe after war would be even more difficult. So my point is that there is somewhere down the line a wake-up call, which actually is, as you say, as you quoted, is either a declaration of death because the patient just did not wake up, or it's now that we have to wake up. So there are very important meetings today in Paris. UK Prime Minister made a statement on sending troops to Ukraine. Well, that's a very welcome step, and understanding how difficult it is to make this step. Right? It will never be popular. There will be people who will be definitely against it. But this is the leadership that we need.
We've heard Poland won't do that. Do you think that Baltic states should do that?
I was, when President Macron a year ago declared that France is considering sending troops, I tried to get a consensus in my country and was one of the first to support President Macron. Back then, I believe that we most likely we will not have any other solution. This is, I mean, either we defend Riga in Riga or we defend Riga in Kharkiv. I suggest Kharkiv.
And as you said, you and President Macron have been the ones talking about it the most, or if not the only ones. And this is actually a question where even the Baltic states are not on the same page exactly. So you said you had this conversation back in Lithuania. You would say that your government and your society was ready for a step like that and facing the possible consequences?
I mean, if you would go out and have a referendum on that, I don't think that you would win. Nobody wants to send their sons and daughters to Ukraine to fight, right? Because it's very difficult to understand that actually this is our fight already going there. But in some cases, you just have to do what is right. And I have two sons who are in the military, and they would be defending my country. So when I'm saying that this has to happen, one could say I'm pretty much invested. I know what it would cost, and it's an incredibly high cost, but it might be just one thing that is necessary.
And then we go back to those years where we know how long it took for many European Union countries to reach the 2% of GDP.
Not everybody
has done that, right? And now we're talking 4 and 5. I mean, when the first shock wave of Munich will be gone, do you see things changing fast, really?
Well, I mean, if we let it slide, right? If we wait a little bit, if we conceal the truth from the societies of actually what might happen, we will never get there. Because it's just, with time, the things will slow down, some talks will happen, somebody will say, well, maybe, now we start preparing for the next time Russia will attack. I mean, next time might be attack on one of us. And that's why, I choose to be in my country, I chose to be a bit unpopular, but to say what is actually happening. And it's not going well.
Did it cost you?
And it cost us election, yeah. Partially, yes, because, the then opposition, the current ruling government, they say, oh, look, calm down, everything is fine. But how, if you say calm down, everything is fine, how can you expect people paying 4% or 5% of your salary, of your GDP, basically of everything you create to defense, if you're saying that it's going to be probably fine? I have to say, look, before the Second World War, Britain would spend 4% of their GDP to defense. During the war, 50%. That is the calculation. So maybe it's better now to reach the 4%, 5% and expect that, that it is enough to deter, so that we don't have to spend 50, so that, we don't have to send actually, our sons and daughters to fight, a real fight in defense. So because now we still have a chance to deter, so the Russians actually back off.
You actually wrote on Twitter that, yes, all these things are hard to do, but it's easier than, and I quote you, fighting a huge war in the forests of Poland and Germany. You don't mention Baltics, but you mentioned Germany. Do you actually think that Russia could and would go that far?
Well, that's, I specifically, since I wrote it while in Germany, I wanted, so that it's felt on the skin. I don't have a sense that when I'm saying, Vilnius, Suwalki Gap, Latvia, Estonia, Narva, that it's something that you would make your skin crawl. For the people, further to the west. They were like, well, it's really far away. When you say, well, Germany was basically under occupation, I mean, what says that it cannot happen again? I mean, you have an army of 1.5 million people who fought for 3 years and were almost at the point of delivering them the victory.
Do you think they have this sense of threat in Germany and France and farther away?
Well, clearly there was a cold shower last week. Yeah, clearly that was a cold shower for a lot of people to start considering what happens. When I talk with German experts, and I really had a lot of chance to do that, I truly have a sense of change in their attitude. My explanation to that is that especially after Germany, took, now they're building up the brigade to come to Lithuania, and for them the defense of eastern flank suddenly became something that is theirs. This is real. This is no longer, a theoretical, possibility, but you have to plan. Like, where would your troops be? Where would your military base be? How many tanks do you need? How do you defend, this part of territory and all these things? And then you suddenly start to change. So there is change happening. Whether that's, we might find a way how to criticize our own countries, right? So our Western partners are, well, in some cases, at least 2 steps behind.
And we find those ways, of course, and that's our job. But I will quote my colleague Ilse Nagla, who after Munich said that President Zelensky sounded more like a leader of Europe than all the other leaders combined. Do you see a strong leader now in Europe, a figure which could actually change the course of the whole union?
Well, leaders are born, they're made. Leader is the one who takes the flag and says, okay, I will, I suggest we go there. And, when he starts going, he or she starts going that direction. So in every occasion, a hero might rise. Nothing is written. There is no rule that would forbid anybody from saying, we can do this.
But so the one should still rise. You don't see one.
Well, heroes are probably counted not by intentions, but by results. So we're yet to see that.
We're waiting for results of election in Germany. How about Friedrich Merz?
Well, but again, for leader, for a heroic figure to rise, one has to be effective. To bring a change that that everybody else is waiting. To have good intentions, that's very important. To have a good heart, a good mind, that's very important. Without these qualities, not so many things happen. But then again, you have to be able to gather others around. Others should follow. I had many conversations and with leaders in Europe. I said, don't forget about the Baltics, right? Because if you forget about us, you will never become a leader because we will not follow.
Well, if we have a choice, right?
If we have a choice, yes. That is a good way to phrase it, especially for what's coming in Riyadh.
Before we go further, I mentioned Germany, and I wanted to ask you, what is your view on how Trump's administration has rooted for AfD, which is a party which apparently doesn't share the critical views of Putin and his Russia?
Well, that was a strange thing, I can tell you. I've been openly criticizing Viktor Orban and his way of governing Hungary, but also the way that he behaves in Europe. I said that if anything, his interests are not just not aligned with Europeans, they go against. Right? I can clearly say that I see a great value in stronger Europe that is able to be a partner to US, withstand China's pressure, and he sees a value in weak European Union. So he goes against my interest, the way that I form, the interests of my country, the interests of my people, at least in part that I represent. And now US finds these actors, not just in Hungary, but elsewhere, in Germany, in other countries, and supports them. The actors that actually want to weaken Europe. They want to see Europe, disband. They want to see, Brexits and stuff. This is what they want, and Europe and US supports them. So my question is: so what kind of Europe does US want? A strong partner, or a non-existent one?
Well, they would probably answer you that it's all about conservative values.
Well, there is nothing conservative of Europe not being able to, to support itself, right? So it's even contradictory. You are asking Europe to be more effective, right? To spend more on defense, to build up its ability to support Ukraine and all the other things that in practice would mean more federalization. Because the way that Europe is structured right now, right, we are unable Basically, most of the decisions we're unable to make them because we're just, a loose confederation. So if we want to be effective, then, okay, the qualified majority has to be introduced, more decisions made, by different kind of vote, common borrowing. So basically all the things that US underwent 200 years ago, so we have to go that path if we want actually to be stronger. And then you root out for the parties who want absolutely the different thing.
So you've done your conclusions from this?
I'm raising questions at this point. I said that, look, what happened was, and you can call it that, somebody said, oh, it's an insult, blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe. But I use the metaphor of a gauntlet, when somebody throws down the gauntlet. And you have two ways about it. You can pick it up, or you can just walk past. I suggest we walk past. That's not so important right now. We'll deal with our elections. I'm sure that we'll be fine. We have bigger issues. We have Ukraine, we have eastern flank security, we have probability of trade wars, we have defense industry to think of. We have a homework list that is very, very long. And somebody just, punched you in the school. Well, brush it off, go back home, do your homework, and be better prepared next time.
About Ukraine, Kaja Kallas said in Munich that Europe would support Ukraine if it decides not to take the peace deal presented by USA. Do you see that Europe actually has a plan in that case, or we would just morally support Ukraine in that case?
That's an excellent question. I fully support Kaja Kallas when she says that. Truly, there's no other way. There's the only thing that we can say. Everybody who cares about Ukraine. If Ukraine is not taking the deal, we're not taking the deal with them. But the next moment, we have to answer when the ammunition flow stops to Ukraine from the United States. Can we cover for that? When the personnel vehicles that Ukraine is using in the front, that they stop arriving from the US, can we purchase them and deliver to Ukraine? And all the other things. So what is morally right has to be backed what is practically also possible and know what we can do. So, if there's one thing that we need to do is really to start planning where we are going to purchase, what we're going to purchase, with what money, and all the other things. Maybe Paris will give the answers to that.
But still, it's long-term decisions, but we have to, if something like that happens, we have to support Ukraine now. So can we replace? One of the
one of the things that could be immediately implemented, it's 190 billion euros worth of Russian frozen assets in Europe, mostly in Belgium. We went back and forth for almost, 1.5 years probably, in not being able to make a decision on this. This is money just lying there. Is it morally right, practically right? In every, from every corner you look at it, it is possible to do it. 190 billion euros that we could be able to take is Russian money, and we can spend it on Ukraine.
But you can't fight with money.
You can fight with money. That's why I started, like the list. What are you going to buy? Where are you going to buy? And then with what money? Because with what money, I think that is an easier part, especially for Europe. But now the questions are where and on what. And here we will also have a very difficult decision to make because for most part, if you are looking for industrial output where we would be able to purchase something that is, rapidly produced, it's only the United States.
And they want us.
And they want us, of course, yeah. So imagine, France taking a decision that we're going to spend. Well, Russian money maybe not be that difficult to spend in the United States. Maybe we can agree on that. But taking European money and spending that in US, well, that will be a tough one. But still, I think that, at least partially, most likely it will be done also. There will be just no other way.
You've emphasized many times how important it is to integrate Ukraine in European Union now, not 5 or 10 years from now. So do you see that happening?
Well, every single time, I'm advocating for something, and usually it's very difficult. I've sat through the meetings where we would disagree on a date where we would announce start of negotiations, something like that, and we cannot agree, and it's postponed. So it's not an integration. It's ages before, but I mean, still the agreement is not found because, for example, Hungary decides that it can blackmail EU and Ukraine for some other decisions. So clearly it is a very difficult decision. My point comes from the idea that EU is also a deterrent, right? If we want to stabilize the situation, we have to tell Russians with all we have, with everything that we have, with troops, money, equipment, and integration into EU, that next time you attack, this is different situation. Already different situation. Not a promise that if you attack, then it will be different, but already different now. So attacking a EU country might seem different from Russian perspective. I'm not sure, but it might. So that's one. So it works as some sort of a deterrent. Second thing is, clearly EU can stabilize Ukraine economically, financially, even diplomatically and politically, right? It is, you are in a big group. Integration matters, and we've seen that in our countries clearly. I mean, we wouldn't be where we are now if not for everything EU that we got from EU, not just the money, but the system itself. But the main question remains: is it possible? Is it viable? Well, but I would repeat what I said before. It will be way more difficult to rebuild after the war.
We heard Zelensky saying that Putin now seems the most influential member of NATO, saying who can and who can't join the alliance. Do you see that it could be the case in European Union as well, as a part of the peace deal, that Ukraine has to stay out, and we have to decide on that, whether we take that?
Honestly, this is one of the things that I don't believe that Putin will be asking. He won't ask anything about Europe. I think that he will not see Europe as it's not at the table, so it's on the menu. Basically, we're talking about Europe, not with Europe. So that will be, more. But there's additional factor that we have to count in. There are a couple of things that Putin has asked when he attacked Ukraine, or before attacking Ukraine. He asked neutrality, defending Russian rights, and denazification, basically change of government. So all of those things, I think that there's a big likelihood that he will get from President Trump. President Trump already said that new election has to be, that territories are new reality, and no NATO, meaning neutrality. So Putin can walk out basically having won all. But there's one additional thing that he asked before attack. He said that now NATO needs to retreat to 1997 borders. And we have to ask ourselves a question. If he asks that of President Trump during elections at the table where we are not present, where Europe is not present, NATO is not present, Ukraine is not present, so that might be additional thing that that he will count as a victory. For us, it spells a very dark scenario.
And do you see Trump giving him that?
Well, I'm not sure if there's anybody stopping him from giving him that.
From himself, maybe.
Yes, exactly.
If he wants to do that. That's
yeah,
the question.
That's my point. If he wants, the point is that he wants a fast deal. He never said about fair deal. He never said about something that would be, long term, stable. No, fast. Well, fast usually is unfair and expensive.
But do you see USA actually having a power and a will, in that case, to make Russia and Putin take a plea deal? They are not that satisfied as the one we are hearing about now.
Well, look, I mean, that's probably part of the problem, that we've never heard the request to Putin. The only question that was posed when it was mentioned that if he doesn't do, then we'll impose sanctions. So if he doesn't come to negotiating table, if Putin does not agree to negotiate, there will be sanctions.
But with these offers, why wouldn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So he will come. So his team is already in Riyadh.
So we have heard a lot of criticism for Trump about giving everything Putin wants before the negotiation has already started, and there are some opinions that that's the only way how to get Putin to the table, and that he would be forced to go away with less. Do you see any hidden wisdom in the way USA have been conducting these talks?
Well, I mean, it's a tale as old as time, as they say. In 1938, Neville Chamberlain, had devised a very smart way how to get Herr Hitler to a negotiating table by giving half of Czechoslovakia. Well, that didn't work so well. So if every time that the aggressor asks for something and you give just part of not your own country to the aggressor, well, we know how that ends. Then we will be asked the second time and the third time, and God knows when, how many more. So this is indeed very worrying. And I mean, there is one more parallel. So many, since Munich in 1938, so kind of there is this parallel which is truly scary and also kind of has a reason to be. But there's another parallel. That there's already been a pact between two countries that divided Europe, that spoke about Europe without Europe, that spoke about us, about Latvia and Lithuania without us. It was called Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact. So let's hope that there are people who advise President Trump not to have the same thing happen again.
You were mentioning USA talking about Ukraine not getting its territories back, and we are now very angry about USA saying that, but isn't it a big hypocrisy? Because if we look back at all those 3 years of full-scale war, Ukraine continuously asked for more fighter jets and tanks and missiles and the permission to actually use them. And when the permission or the weaponry was granted, it never made the change that big as everyone expected, because it was always too late, always too little. And you have said that actually it seems that allies have been guarding Russia more than Ukraine itself.
Yeah, well, actually, again, an excellent question. I was asked this a couple of days, when Trump announced the trip to Riyadh and other things, and the person texted me, so do you miss Biden? And I said, well, I miss Reagan. Because honestly, we could have avoided this situation. We could have been in a better situation. We, in the eastern flank, Ukraine, all of us. And Putin would negotiate not like a winner, not like a Tsar, who gets what he wants, but like a loser in the battle where he lost, like Russia lost in Afghanistan, like he lost in the beginning of last century in Japan. Russia has lost in the past. Russia could have lost now, but it was up to us. I mean, the collective West, to either to give them victory or deny them that, and we did not do our job.
Well, we remember that we journalists remember that there were always some explanation why something can't be delivered faster or in bigger numbers or at all. Mm-hmm. So you say they are all just excuses, and the main factor was fear of Russia actually losing.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I was so sick and tired of listening to all the explanations. I remember the last one, which was, when Ukrainians, last half of year, 2024, they have been asking for permission to shoot deeper into Russia. We know that they have very limited amount of rockets. But still, I mean, just allow us to hit certain targets. And how many explanations? I've sat through the meetings where it was explained, it is not possible. There are no targets. Nothing is there. And suddenly, they switch it on, they allow, and targets appear. I mean, I probably, but I'm out of the diplomacy, so I can express my emotions a bit more openly. So, I mean, it is impossible to sit with a straight face when this stuff like that is being told to you. This is really hypocrisy. If I'm mad, so imagine how Ukrainians feel about all of this. And you're absolutely right that it was fear. It was fear constructed by Russians in order to put us in the situation where they wanted us, and they managed that successfully. That is the first biggest battle that Putin lost. He lost all the battles in Ukraine, militarily, but he won the battle in Western mind.
Don't you fear at all what would happen if Russia lost this war?
No, I much more fear what happens when Russia declares victory.
Mm-hmm. But is it still possible for Russia to lose, or this is past us?
It is always possible for Russia to lose. It is clearly possible. I mean, And when President Trump was elected, then he announced this Reagan doctrine of peace through strength, announced that there possibility of sanctions, and did not reduce the support to Ukraine. I've got so many questions by journalists as well. So is there hope? And I said, yes, there is hope. I mean, United States as such is a formidable industrial machine that their support behind Ukraine would crumble Putin's armies. Ukrainians have the will, the capacity, the knowledge, ability, political will, anything. Just give them the tools and they will do the job.
Well, now after 3 years, they have problem with manpower, and you can understand that.
They do. Also, I mean, one of the last meetings that I had as a minister in NATO in last December, I was exactly the point that was made by some allies to Ukrainians, like, oh, you should mobilize more. And I intervened, and I said, look, it goes both ways. I mean, of course, I would like to mobilize, but then when I'm thinking about Lithuanian soldiers, would you send them? Would you mobilize them if they are unarmed, if they are not covered by air defense, if you don't have ammunition to shoot back and basically send them to a meat grinder? It's way more difficult to convince anybody to go to the front when you know that situation is very dire. And trust me, Ukrainians do know that. Sometimes here, I mean, we have conflicting information because we trust American sources, European sources, right? They say everything is fine. But if you go to the front and they say, look, for every 20 Russian rockets we shoot one. I've been last year to Kharkiv. Now the situation is a bit better. But last year it was like that. To mobilize people in the situation where you don't have equipment and weapons. It's very difficult. So I said, let's start other way around. Let's agree that, as much as you mobilize, every single soldier will be equipped by NATO standard. That will be easier.
You mentioned sanctions. Do you find it likely that they will be lifted as a part of the possible peace deal? Because we heard the State Secretary saying that, well, Europeans should be at the table just because of this, of all the sanctions.
Yeah, well, it could be. I mean, and with sanctions, we have to remember that every half a year, we have to unanimously agree so that they are prolonged for half a year. So it takes one country, one veto, and we don't have sanctions. So I made a different proposal. I suggested that Europe, along with everything else that it has on its homework list, should start debating about Article 7. Article 7 is used when a country in Europe systematically breaches some fundamental values of Europe. One of those fundamental values is solidarity. And if it's defined that the country breached that, an agreement is found among other countries, that country can be stripped of its voting right in the Council. And there has been a discussion about this, did not go far, but I think as a debate, as a principle, it has to be reinstated. That such countries as Hungary that go against the principle, well, Article 7 is especially for that.
Do you see other leaders being responsive to this idea? Because, well, it's been a big debate what to do with Hungary, for example, but here we are.
I think that usually what I hear, but it's very difficult. It's close to impossible every single time. Well, everything is impossible until you start doing it and then it's actually done.
But if the sanctions are lifted, do you see Europe slowly going back to doing business with Russia?
Clearly, there will be countries. Yeah. There will be countries who will be doing that. I mean, probably even in our countries there will be businesses, right? I don't think that our country's position will change. That's too far. But there will be businesses who will say, oh, look, I mean, it's open, so why not? It's an opportunity.
Yeah, and other countries doing that will put pressure on other countries,
yeah. I mean, it will be rebuilt
soon.
Yeah, if that happens. I mean, clearly, it's not yet a decision.
So you have no illusions about this?
Oh no. That's why we need to be mobilized, right? I mean, if your gut is telling you that it is not right, if you have to go against it, then this is your time to say it. You have to say that it's not right.
We talk a lot about military coalition between Baltic states, between Nordic countries, and maybe Poland, UK, France. Do you see a coalition of this kind to be strong enough to actually deter Russia from invading any of the mentioned countries and Ukraine again?
Well, honestly, now I don't see anything else apart from NATO and United States that could deter Russia. And therefore, as we spoke at the beginning, that this fractions and splits within the alliance give a hope, for Russia, for China, that maybe there's an opportunity to do things. But we have to be mindful about this, that if the fractions would go deeper, or even in parallel, I mean, they might heal in time, but our regional cooperation has to get stronger. And we have to really build this up.
President Zelensky, in his speech in Munich, asked whether our armies are ready if Russians came. Are they?
That's a very good question. I think as a combined unit of NATO, if all the NATO, mustered at the borders of Latvia and Russia, I think that they would be an incredible deterrent. Nobody would want to test that. But we're long away from having all the armies at the border, and now Putin thinks in way shorter terms. It's not a 5-year, 10-year planner. He's getting old, and for him the horizon is way shorter. So also, apart from the regional, strengthening of regional alliances, Nordic and Baltic, Baltic and Polish, Baltic and German, and everyone's combined, we have to also think about our own, what we should do. And if there's a country that we can learn from, is Finland.
Yeah, but so right now there is a bad answer to this good question of Zelensky's.
Yes. I think that if you compare Ukrainian armies, 150 brigades of battle-hardened people, and our armies, which are well equipped, well trained, NATO standard, but have not seen battle, have not seen Russians, and Russians seen battle.
And don't have all the systems needed as well. And of course, we know we have to wait for air defense systems and stuff. But would you say that as far as it's possible, the Baltic states have made most of the last 3 years? Yeah, of course. I mean, even though I'm critical, right? It's always, in my opinion, it's better to be critical in order to push further. But we have to admit that out of almost everybody, we've made the most progress. Nordic region as well, look at Sweden, look at Finland, Denmark, they making leaps as well, changing the mentality, restructuring the way that countries work. But I think that for us, being first in the class is good, but It's not enough?
We have to be, to make sure that we're alive. That's a competition. So
the last question, do you actually think we will have to prove our readiness?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
You actually think so?
Yeah. We have to be really ready for that. This is not in theory.
Okay, so we will have to end here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you.